Hello and welcome to the third episode of
Drunken
Dialectics. I'm Brandon.
I'm Devin.
I'm Payne.
And, Payne picked the topic of conversation for today, so Payne, why don't you start us off while me and Devin take a opening drink here?
Alright, so for today, we are going to be looking at the 5 personality traits. And we're going to be discussing them, how they relate to, political views, mostly. And we're just going to discuss the test that we all took. And so, yeah.
And we're working from the Big 5 model, and I think we're also going to talk a little bit about the Myers-Briggs model as well, which is it's made up of 4 things. You're either one or the other, or I guess 16 total. That's divided into 4 different parts. Then you divide those 4 parts into 2 other parts, and then you take that times pi. You get the golden ratio.
Drunken mathematics.
Drunken mathematics. Okay. So,
that was not right, for the record.
Prove me wrong. Exactly. Okay. So
you can't.
So we're gonna
cannot.
So we're gonna start with the Big 5.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the first aspect of the Big 5 is the openness. Openness is how you feel about new experiences. It's is that a good way?
Yeah.
I mean, it's summed up in the name, right? Openness. How open are you to new things, to new ideas you haven't heard before? Things that kind of, in a lot of ways, things that test what you already think, right? So your openness to the outside. Now, me and Devin scored quite high on this. I haven't heard Payne's score yet. So, Payne, why don't you give us yours?
Alright, I got an 81% on openness.
Oh, wow, 81. And the percent is like, where you're at percentile-wise to the rest of the population who have taken the test. So, the higher up you are, so like if you're like a 95 percentile, that means that there's only, it's either, I think it's 5% of the population are more open than you. So, the higher the number, the more you are of that aspect. So, Devin, what did we get on the openness?
We both got a 98.
A 98. So, apparently, only 2% of the population are more open than we are. And openness is, in a lot of ways, correlated to the liberal or left-leaning ideas. Like, the more open you are, in general, the more likely you are to lean left. So, I kind of break the box on that one a little bit. Because I'm pretty right in both senses of the word.
There we go. And it also seemed from the test to take a lot of influence from like how much you appreciate art.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it does do that in the test. But again, like we talked about before, I think the more open you are to art, you're probably also more open to.
All right, sure.
I think that I don't think it's not without merit.
Oh yeah.
So, anything else you want to talk about on the openness? Is there anything? I mean, this is Payne's conversation, so I want him to take over here. Payne, do some talking. Let's go. The audience wants more Payne. That's what I've heard.
The spotlight is blinding right now. I don't know. I mean, I think openness is a pretty important trait, when we talk about hierarchy. Right? I don't know.
It always comes back to hierarchy. That's what everything is.
I mean, it kind of combats with conscientiousness in a sense of political issues, whether you're right or left. And so that's the most, those are the 2 most important traits when we talk about politics. In a sense. When
it comes to political alignment, those are the 2 that tend to correlate the most with where you fall on the scale. So yeah, I would say that's correct. I would say both of all 3. I mean, you're high too in that. I mean, you're not one of the top 2%, but
I wasn't sucking my own dick saying I'm so creative on the test. You two probably were. God, I have a vivid imagination. Wow. God, you 2 are real golden stars.
Is that a Holocaust reference, Payne?
What the fuck, Payne?
Damn. That's not okay.
I didn't know that's what golden stars meant, to be honest.
Well,
I don't know what you're talking about either.
Yeah, that's what I'd say too. Little Nazi. Okay, so I think a high openness is why we're actually able to do this podcast in a lot of ways. I think that's pretty much what it comes down to. The reason we're actually able to do this, because I mean, if either one of us were, low in that, I mean, we wouldn't even want to have this conversation. So I mean, I think openness is important in that sense, in the sense of ideas being able to combat each other in a productive way. I think both parties in some way have to be fairly open. So, should we move on to conscientiousness, or?
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, unless Devin has
No, that's pretty much covered it.
Yeah, I was surprised how open we ended up being on that one. That shocked me. I wasn't expecting that. So, next up is conscientiousness. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. It's a lot of S sounds in there. It's throwing me off.
Yeah, I think
but
okay. Like a 7 out of 10 pronunciation.
But the best way I think to sum up conscientiousness is how productive you are in a system, or how dedicated you are to being productive in a given system. Is anybody have a better definition than that to go off of?
Yeah, I mean, it's all organization, just how, like, making a schedule, following it. So, yeah, I think that's right.
It is the order trait.
It is the order trait, very much. And I was actually surprised how low I scored on this one.
Really?
So, yeah, it wasn't very low, but I mean, it was lower than I thought I'd get. So, Payne, what'd you end up with?
I had a 73 on conscientiousness.
Oh, wow. Wow. You really are a little Nazi, aren't you? Okay, so I ended up with a 52. So, I mean, above average, but not much. Right along the middle ground there. I have a hard time sticking to plans, and that's the main reason for that. I like to work on the fly. So, I think that's a lot of what that comes down to. And Devin?
29.
Yeah, Devin's just not a hard worker. He shows up to the podcast an hour late.
It's kind of
usually drunk already.
It's a problem.
It is a problem. I mean, he's kicked the heroin, so I mean,
Yeah.
we're all proud of him.
Yeah. A little bit of crack here and there, but
Well, I mean, one day at a time.
baby steps.
So I think we'll get more into the correlation between those two and political beliefs after we go through the whole test. So
Okay, sounds good.
So, want to go ahead and move on to extroversion?
Yeah.
Okay, so Payne,
Right.
give us a brief definition of extroversion.
All right, so extroversion is how important you view social success. I think we're all social creatures. You know, we all care about how we're held in the esteem of others, but we're not. I mean, we vary in how we treat social situations. We vary in how we. Well, it's really also about motivation as well. So, I mean, like, what motivates you if you're high in extroversion could be how other people would value what you are doing. If you get admired by what you are doing, and you value their admiration of you, then you might be high in extroversion.
See, I don't agree with what you just said there. I think it's a lot more just. I think the extroversion thing is a lot more just primal feeling based. It's how comfortable are you. That's how I see it. Is how comfortable are you in social situations. Like, I am, as we're about to find out, very low in extroversion. And I do think there's a lot of importance in being socially competent. Yeah, I guess that's probably the best word to do. Socially competent. It's just I am not in any way a social person. If you're not a good friend to me or family, then I am not good at talking to you. That's pretty much what it comes down to. I am not good in social situations. So I think it's more just. I think it's, like I said, I think it's more of a primal, like, gut feeling in the particular person, and like, how comfortable are you at it?
That's true, but I think no matter who you are, you can get comfortable with it. I think there's exceptions, but I think there's ways to get comfortable in social situations.
Ooh, I want to talk about this, but let's go ahead and,
okay.
well, Devin, do you have
All right,
anything to
all
add before we say the scores out?
No.
Why don't you start us off, Devin?
35%.
That's not bad. I mean, yeah, that's.
It seems about right.
No, not yet. Go ahead, man.
All right. Oh, sorry. 56% is fine.
Okay, so here's my Devin conscientiousness moment. 12.5. 12.5
Really?
percentile, yes. And I actually disagree with Payne about what he just said. You do not. I have worked very hard. It's like I said on the actual previous podcast about striving to be empathetic. It does not come natural to me. Now, it's the same way in social situations. By nature of my job, I have to be able to talk to people and communicate with them in a productive way. I've gotten better at it, but I am no more comfortable with it than I was when I first started. It is still a very stressful situation for me. A lot of people, if you don't work out a lot, like after you work out like real hard, if you're not used to it and you're just drained afterwards, that's what social situations do to me. They just drain me, like physically. Like it's really weird.
No,
yeah, I don't think you get more comfortable. You can get better at it, but I don't think you get more comfortable with it. Maybe you do. Maybe I just haven't done it long enough. But as for me, no.
All right, okay, so if a person that's more of an introvert has a 12.5% extroversion, gets in a party or just a social gathering, it will drain them. But I'm more referring to the anxiety that can come with social situations, and so it can be it's stress as well. And so I think that if you take steps towards fixing how you represent yourself to people consciously, I think it can happen. I think you could eventually value the art of talking to people, the skills that you could acquire in communicating with people, because it's very rewarding if you know how to do it, and it's also very useful in hierarchy. I think it's the biggest trait for climbing a hierarchy is how well you socially interact.
I think we should make a new rule where we have to drink every time one of us says the word hierarchy.
Well, I mean, I'm not drinking, so you guys are going to suffer for it.
But no, I still think you're wrong. I very much see the value in social interaction. I very much see I think it very much is an art to be able to interact competently socially, and at an above average level. And I have worked to develop those skills. I still get anxiety from it. And like I said, maybe I just haven't reached this point, or maybe I'm just an exception. I don't think you get more comfortable with it.
I think it's something that differs from person to person. I think one thing with the test itself, the way the questions are asked for things pertaining to extroversion, it's asked in a way that it's more about like that gut instinct type of deal like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And less about like actual applied like conversation and things from what I got.
From what I understand, that's the point of the test, though. It's not an ideological test. It's more like a base level, your base personality. How does your base personality operate? The best verb I can come up with there is operate. It's very much the test from what I understand of it is it's supposed to be a primal gut thing. So if that's what you're saying, I think that's how it's supposed to be.
I will say that I don't know. I think at least some people, I think, I'll just speak for myself, I guess. I've gotten more comfortable in social situations over time, but like I'm still not comfortable. I'm just not as uncomfortable as I would have been previously. The anxiety level is a little bit lower most of the time, but I don't know. I feel like that is something you can kind of change. I don't know necessarily that like it'll ever get to the point of being absolutely comfortable.
Yeah.
But maybe not as jarring.
Well, from what I understand from what I've seen about the tests and like tests upon the tests, like studying like the Big Five and stuff, is you can change. You can but from pretty much everything I've seen, you're not going to change more than like I think it's around 15% is like a max. Like people don't change past that. There is something that's intrinsic to us that you can move, but from what I've seen, most people do not move to an extreme extent.
Right.
Like maybe if I really push myself, I could probably maybe get to like 25. I don't see myself getting to 50. I don't think that's going to happen.
Maybe it would have been a good idea to take these tests sober and then take them drunk and see if the numbers are different.
Maybe we should. We should do that at some point next time. But like, I think next time we'll be drinking before the podcast, so instead of starting right at it. So we'll get the test done real quick and see if anything's different. Okay. So anything else on extroversion?
Okay, I do have a question for both of you since you kind of agree with each other here. So, do you think that social anxiety has... Well, okay, so like your own social anxiety or stress is related to your... Well, it's definitely related to your view on the situation, how you view the situation, because you view it as scary or stressful. So, do you think it can be conceptualized differently by you to create an opening for more
growth?
Yes, for growth. And I think it can change. And the reason I think that is because I don't view myself as like a person who socially interacts very well, or at least I was really bad, and then I kind of learned more about it just by observing and thinking about it.
You can't just go around quoting Moby Dick to everybody. That's.
I mean, you could, but it's a hard sell.
No, but I learned something about that. I learned that, sometimes quoting Moby Dick is funny. Right? But the situation almost never calls for it. And I realized that your personality is something that's intrinsic in all of us. And in situations, socially, they all call for that part of you. Whether it's an angry part of you, well, sometimes it can happen. But you have a personality and you can represent it honestly. And everything about social interaction is pretty much reaction. And everything calls for a certain reaction out of you. And that's just how you view the situation. And so I think I just think there's certain steps that everyone can take. Maybe when might not get over 50, probably definitely not, but I think it can definitely increase with just kind of thinking about it, just kind of viewing it maybe differently.
Well, I think I did say it can change.
Right.
And yeah. I've done it through basically what you just said, by having to put myself in a mindset that's contrary to my own. If I would have taken this probably a year ago, I probably would have been around 6%. It has changed. I have become more extroverted. But like I said, I think you can only do that to a certain point before. And I think you can be extremely introverted and still function at a high level socially.
Yeah,
right.
It's just that you are not going to be the most comfortable person doing it. You're gonna have to. It's gonna be a struggle. Is what it seems to be.
That's one thing I was gonna say. Is I don't think that the extroversion score necessarily mean like having a very low. You could have a very low extroversion score and still like be very social. Like in practice, like able to be very social. It's just the question of do you want to be?
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to, I think.
So I think you could absolutely, like, there are people who could absolutely be very social when they need to be. They just prefer not to because they're internally uncomfortable over it. And that's kind of like you were saying with the there's like a brain battery on that one, where like after a certain amount of social interaction, it's just like, all right, battery's dead, time to go.
That's pretty much exactly how it is. If I could spend my whole workday just listening to stuff on my phone, just by myself completely, it'd be the best work day. I would not mind going to work at all, but I can't do that. So I do have to step out of my introversion. Like I said, I don't think it's impossible. I think what it really measures is the comfort level. So
I think even like the gut like physical reaction can be toned down a little bit over time.
Oh yeah.
Because like I used to have like really really bad social anxiety, like would break out in rashes, bad social anxiety, wow. And that is, other than like just really awkward situations, it's nowhere near that bad anymore. I mean, I'll still feel uncomfortable, but it's not like I'm actually dying type of deal. So that's nice.
I can say mine's never been that bad, so... I mean, maybe, geez. Well, I think also, when you're younger, from what I understand, that is when you really can change the scales of it. Right. I think it's... What I'm talking about in terms of like changing it by degrees of 15%, that's more when you're kind of done developing... like physically and in many ways mentally and emotionally. You're done developing. At that point, it's going to be very hard to change. It's like the same thing as trying to learn a second language when you're past 20. It's a lot harder than when you're 5 years old. So, okay, so on to agreeableness. Yeah. Okay, Fang, give us the down low on this.
The low down, if you will.
Is that what the kids are saying nowadays?
The low down, ho down.
Not.
You're the representative of your generation here, Payne. So tell us.
It's a lot of pressure.
What's the new catchphrase? I want to hear it. What is it?
Something. Split your lungs with blood and thunder.
No, haven't heard that one.
That's from Moby Dick.
Huh?
That's from Mastodon, bro.
Yeah, in a song about Moby Dick.
Is that actually in the book though?
I thought it was.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I haven't actually read Moby Dick yet. That's a good album.
It is a good album.
I haven't listened to Mastodon in years. I need to revisit that.
Anywho, open this. No.
Their new stuff sucks.
Open this.
I'm just throwing that out there.
I haven't heard anything put out.
Anything past Oblivion is terrible.
Agreeableness.
I mean, now...
No.
Leviathan.
This is a Mastodon podcast. Sorry. Am I good to go here?
I guess.
Call me Ishmael.
Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse.
Are we doing this?
Hey, the situation called for it.
No.
All right.
Oh God, that bad radio laugh again. I'm sorry, audience. I will work on it.
Oh God. All right. Agreeableness. Okay. It's how well you can relate to the emotions and the needs of others.
That's a way of defining it that I haven't heard before.
Really?
Yeah. Agreeableness is more. I think that's more of an action-based thing. It's pretty much comes up to are you going to put how much you put yourself above others. I guess maybe I could see how your way of defining it makes sense in that context. Maybe. I don't know. I'd have to hear you say it again. It didn't make sense when I first heard it. But I'll throw mine out there, okay. And then you can try me again to see if we're disagreeing.
Okay.
Agreeableness. If you're more agreeable, you're going to put other people above you. If you're less agreeable, you're going to put yourself above other people in terms of needs, in terms of whose needs you are going to meet.
That sounds right. I mean, it. Yeah. Like I guess I could see how I explained it weird. I think I've always thought of agreeableness as kind of a. Well, it's frequently higher in women.
What? I mean, that's true, but
so I'm saying that women, they are more. They're better relating to other people's emotions.
Yeah, that's true.
So I've always thought of it like that, and I've also thought of it like how you described it. So
I actually want to touch upon that thing you just said. Let's get through the other, like this one and the next one first, and I want to come back to what you just said.
Okay.
So, Devin, anything to add to that before we reveal our scores?
No, let's go ahead with the scores.
I'm fairly low at 37.5 percentile.
This is my lowest score, 50%.
50? Right at 50?
Yep.
So are you constantly torn between other people and yourself? Like, can you not make a decision? If it comes down to that. Okay, so there's this, real quick, there's a little argument against, like, or I guess argument for free will, where it's like, if you were to drop a newborn calf, like perfectly newborn, in between two different things of hay, two different bales of hay, at a perfect distance between them, and it having no prior, what's the word? Experience. Could it make a choice if there was no free will? Because literally there is no experience for it to build upon, and they are both an equal distance away. You know what I'm saying?
I've heard that one
Yeah,
before. I heard it with a donkey, though.
It might be donkey. It's been a while since I've heard it. So are you that? Can you not decide between the two bales of hay?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, well I'm at... Oh, I already said mine. So Devin?
77.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That makes sense for her. I think that makes sense. I mean...
Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually surprised when I learned that agreeableness doesn't more correspond to left versus right. But then I actually thought about it, and I can see why it wouldn't. It's more just different means to an end in most situations. Like, I think a person on the far right could be just as agreeable and just have a different way of going about it.
I think it kind of depends on which flavor of the far right, but...
Okay, I just mean, let's go economical for this argument. I think a ANCAP can be perfectly agreeable and just see a different way to get there. That I don't necessarily agree with their way
I don't think
anymore.
ANCAPs
But
can
could
be
you
agreeable.
see what I'm saying now? Oh, come on.
I'm joking.
Okay, anything more to add to that before?
I think we're good.
Okay, I think that's another one we're gonna come. Yeah, because of the whole sexist thing Payne just said.
I'm not saying Ayn Rand would score a 1 in that, but I'm saying Ayn Rand would score a 1 in that.
I think she's strawmanned a lot. I don't know. I disagree with her about a lot, but I think people argue against her in a bad way. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say about Ayn Rand. Okay, so last one, neuroticism, which is basically how open are you to negative emotion? How easily does negative emotion impact you? So I got a 19 on that one.
56.
Also 77.
Oh, jeez. So for me, it probably comes. No, I don't think it stems from my lack of natural empathy. It's just, I don't know. Actually, I've just never been someone who's really down. Doesn't really matter what's happening. I'm ready to deal with it, kind of thing. I mean, I might procrastinate dealing with it because of my average conscientiousness, but I mean, it doesn't really bother me or anything. That's just kind of how I am naturally.
This happens when you're low in extroversion.
Does it? Are you serious? Is that an actual
No.
correlation? Oh. you had me for a second there. I was like, oh, man. Painful when I was talking about the Big Five I didn't know.
Devin, you go ahead.
I think it's the depression. But if I had to pin it on something,
you made me inhale my cigar. I'm not supposed to do that.
I'm pretty sure that has some influence over it.
I can cut this out, but if you want to, are you actually depressed?
Yeah.
Really? Just something you've always had to deal with, or is it like
More or less.
So like a chemical or environmental based kind of thing?
Chemical, as far as I can tell.
Really? So it's not like anything like impacting you. And again, I can cut this out, or you don't have to say anything either way. I'm just curious.
There were certainly some things that didn't help. But it's kind of like the anxiety thing, where like since I was a kid, it always was like I'm very bad at getting on a particular train of thought, and then like if one thing bad happens, it kind of just builds from there, and I have difficulty, which I've worked on it, over time, but I have difficulty kind of getting myself off of a just declining train of thought sometimes. It's generally it happens more with negative than positive emotions, although sometimes the opposite does occur.
I mean, that's the high neuroticism. I mean, that's just kind of, that's literally like, I mean, textbook definition is basically you're going to go down those trains of thoughts. I mean, I don't know. Once again, I don't know environmental. I don't know what really impacts that. I think, real quick, I'm not one of those people who thinks that, like, everybody who has depression is just, like, not dealing with things. Well, I do believe in chemical causes for depression. I think that is very much a thing. I have heard arguments for the otherwise. That's why I'm throwing that out there real quick. I think that's been fairly proven that some people just are depressed by nature, and they have to. I mean, it's hard to deal with. I'm not sure why. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
I mean, it's interesting. I do think that there are like thought strategies that help tremendously.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the case of chemical imbalances, because that was the like, because I used to go to like when I was a teenager, I went to like therapy and stuff for it, and that was one of the main things that they teach is to kind of at times you have to just separate yourself from it and look at that train of thought like rationally and realize this doesn't make sense. It's not actually that bad.
Actually, I'm glad you said that. Oh, go ahead. I'll say it.
I recently learned the word or the idea of catastrophizing things.
Yes.
And makes a lot of sense.
I've known some people very well who do that, and it's really hard for me to deal with because it's hard. I think this is actually something we can touch upon. I mean, we were done, but not done with this particular part. I mean, it's hard to think about, to conceptualize the fact that some people's brains just work different. I mean, I think literally every brain works differently than a different brain.
Right.
I mean, just by nature. But it's really, I mean, when you actually really sit there and think about it, like how can you picture something? It's kind of like the whole idea that, I mean, it's very Lovecraftian in a way. Like it's just, it's literally you cannot imagine it because you don't understand it.
Right. Like
it's kind of trippy when you really get there and think about it. Like people think in different ways.
But yeah, because it's like you're trying to imagine it with your brain, but like you're trying to imagine what it would be like to have a completely different brain and mindset and like pattern of thinking, but it doesn't really work because you're still trying to figure it out with your pattern of thinking.
Yeah, it's really weird. I've like. What's the word? I mean, it's kind of trippy. That's the word I can think. It's very trippy when you really try to do it.
And it's interesting with things like really good actors or like really good writers writing like characters that are completely different from themselves. I think that is one reason why you get a lot of times with writers that just write characters that are different aspects of their personality, which is fine. And
I mean, it's. I think in a lot of ways, it's what separates the great from the good.
Yeah, to be able to completely just invent a person. Although there's one, I'm trying to remember where the original quote came from. What is his name? The original quote isn't, or the original person that said it. I can't remember his name. But Stephen King wrote a book called Bag of Molds. And in it, he quotes, I know like what the guy did. He was a writer for a long time, and then he switched to poetry. And it was actually around the time that he switched to poetry. Thomas Hardy? I think it's Thomas Hardy. Anyway, he was a British writer. But he, when he stopped writing like novels and short stories and just switched wholly to poetry, he had an interesting critique of fictional characters, where he said that compared to an actual human being, even the best fictional character is just a bag of bones, which I think is fair, even with very, very well written characters. Being able to reproduce every level of like human existence is pretty much impossible.
Oh, of course. I mean, we are literally the most complex creatures we know of.
Yeah. I mean, the way...
I don't think we touched upon that in the actual podcast.
Well, you see, Captain Ahab.
No. But what was good? Oh yeah, rationality. See, I don't disregard emotional thinking. I think it has its place, but I am very much a rational based thinker. And you talked about separating yourself and thinking of things rationally. I think that's in many ways why I have a hard time dealing with people who think along those lines, because I just don't. I literally cannot understand it. So I basically have to play understand it. Like I just have to. I think that's all. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just not doing it very well. But I think that's in a person in my situation. I don't know if there's anything else really to do, except fake it till you make it. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's literally alien to me. Like emotional, like truly emotional thinking without any rationality behind it. Don't understand it. So I think that we've got. Did you say yours? Your neuroticism?
Yeah, 56.
Okay, so you're kind of right in the middle then. Yeah. Okay, so let's touch upon what you said, Payne. Women are more agreeable by nature.
Yes.
Okay, well, this has been Drunken Dialectics. No, that is true. That is true. So I think we're actually going to move into for a second is basically biology.
Do you think it's entirely by nature, though?
Yes. I can explain my reason why if you want to.
Okay, I think I may know. I don't think it's entirely by nature.
I'm sure that's not entirely. I mean, nothing's entirely by nature. We're social animals. So,
I think there's kind of an element of a societal element as well, and a raising element. But
I'm sure there's some of that, but I think I think this particular thing is a large chunk of biology. Because, okay, so what through history has been the job of women?
I like how everybody hesitates to answer that question.
No, I'm not gonna. I don't think we're a judgmental podcast. This is a historical question. It's not right or wrong. It's just not right and wrong in terms of moral. It's just historical. What has been the job, the primary occupation of females?
Raise children.
Yes. Wait, would you disagree with that?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
basically
entirely accurate.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, you have to be agreeable to deal with babies because babies.
Yeah, true.
Exactly. I think it is very much evolutionary based. Their agreeableness. I mean, if you're not agreeable, that baby is gonna bug the shit out of you. If you can't put that baby's needs above yours, in an overwhelming way, that you're gonna have a hard time with that baby, because babies are tough. So I think that's really what it all comes down to. It's just an evolutionary basis, or evolutionary basis for that is just the raising of children. I mean, from our basically precognitive days, if those, I mean, like literally early hominids. I think even gorillas or monkeys of all kinds, don't the females, aren't they primary caregivers?
I think so, but I don't.
I don't
know a lot about monkeys.
I don't
either.
either.
To be honest,
I don't. Not in this particular case. I don't. But I think it's very much evolutionary based. And again, I think that's good. I think I think it's good that that's how it is. But I think what this comes down to, I mean, I'm not actually sure. So I'm going to throw this out there. Is there a biological difference between men and women? This is a question that's arising today. We're all looking at Devin.
How do you mean?
I mean, well, do you believe in the blank slate? Do you believe every human is born basically a blank slate?
Like mentally.
I guess mentally is. It's really everything. I don't.
More or less.
No.
I have an iPhone. More or less, I think there are definitely like certain elements that do kind of adjust people one way or another. Things like brain chemistry and mental illness definitely have an effect on people that maybe they wouldn't. Maybe blank slate isn't exactly right, but more or less, yes. Really?
I'm actually surprised by that. I completely disagree. I think we are by no means a blank slate. I think we are very much the subject of our genetics. I truly believe that. I do believe in free will, so I think you do have the ability to choose and make decisions outside of your brain chemistry. But in terms of our natural disposition, I think we are very much the nature of the product of our genetics.
I don't know. Natural disposition is... It's something that can be heavily influenced by environment
but
as well.
That's why I said... But I'm talking about by nature. I mean, of course you can influence it. And actually, I'll go ahead and do this real quick. I'll go ahead and go off on this tangent. Payne, talk while I relight my cigar.
Okay, I guess I'll talk for about yay amount of time.
Yay is not in any way a measurement of anything. Quit using yay.
Listen. Okay, yay is a good word. Everybody knows what you mean. You don't have to provide any specifics, to the situation. You just say yay, and everybody...
Generally speaking, when you say something is yay something, though, you usually do like a hand motion or something.
And it doesn't apply to time, I don't think, in any way.
Well, I mean, you could break it down to a physical example of time, and you could be like, it took about yay long. I'm doing a hand motion right now. You can't see because this is a podcast. But just know it's there.
Okay, what is 5 inches of time, Devin? that's what I want to know. What is 5 inches of time? What is yay time?
Well, maybe every inch could correspond to a set amount of time.
It could, but then you have to basically lay this whole foundation for it.
Well, the breakdown generally here, I think what I'm getting at is if I put my arms really far apart, you get the idea that it's a long time, and if I put them close together, you get the idea that it's a short amount of time.
Okay, but you didn't use any hand signals, Bay. And this is a podcast, so they couldn't see you if you did. Or it's a purely audio podcast.
Let's get back on the...
No. Okay, fine. Okay, so, oh yeah, what I want to touch upon. Okay, so Scandinavia. They have taken the most steps towards...
Pickling fish.
Yes. Norway. That's right. Norway's fishing industry is very good, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly. But no, they have taken the most steps towards equality in the workplace.
Okay.
Along the gender lines. They actually have more diversity in terms of I guess actually no, it's the opposite. There are more okay. I'm gonna start this sentence over. Women and men actually follow more gender norm roles in that society, even though they have technically, by all measures, have strived the most towards trying to equalize the diversity among all fields. They've tried to put more women in engineering STEM fields. They've given ultimate freedom in terms of gender lines. They're seeing a more divergence than in other countries. I think the more freedom you give somebody, the more likely they are to follow their roles. You see this in children as well. 2 children who grow up in can we quickly agree that there is such a thing as a good household and bad household?
Absolutely.
And I think we all kind of understand what we mean by that when I say that, right? Yeah. So, good would be at the very base level, good would be lack of abuse. Let's go bad is basically abuse, right? Just simplify that. When you take two or three children from a bad household, their personalities tend to actually match each other very closely. If they are raised well and have more freedom to be themselves, they actually diverge greatly. I think that's the same thing that's happening in Scandinavia, in which they are giving the ability to follow their more natural dispositions, and you're seeing more females go into nursing fields and caretaking fields, and you're seeing more men go into engineering fields. I think when you give people freedom, they follow their natural dispositions, and there is a difference between the two. I don't real quick, just to throw it out there, none of that is bad, in my opinion. If do what you want to do, that's great. I don't think either one of those are lesser than the other. They are both necessary to a functioning society. Just wanted to throw that out there real quick. I'm not saying that women are lesser by any means. Women are great. I love one very much. So don't take this the wrong way. But that's what I'm trying to get at is I think there are differences, and the more freedom you have, it appears to be the more differences you see in them.
I think it's I think, like you said, like what Scandinavia is doing with opening up, like trying to open it up so the option is there.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Oh, of course.
Because
of course.
Exceptions do exist.
Oh, of course.
I think that
I'm not saying force women into nursing roles by any means. I know. I just throwing that out there for the audience more than anybody. But I know what you're saying.
I do think there are tendencies. I think there's some of it is certainly biological. I think societal influence does also play a role. But I think the important thing is that the option is there. What are you doing?
My cigar is...
There's fire everywhere.
Yeah, I screwed my cigar up. I'm sorry. I was trying to do that quietly away from the microphone, but now you get to hear
Now you're on fire.
What? Okay. Am I still on fire?
No.
Okay.
There was like one ember that fell on your sock, and I was like, oh no.
this whole place is going up in flames. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to do that quietly, but it just ended up being distracting. So, please did you finish that?
But, yeah, no, I think it's... I think there will probably always be, like, certain roles that men are more likely to go into, certain roles that women are more likely to go into. I think the important thing is to recognize that there are exceptions to those rules, and the option should be on the table if someone wants to go into a career that is different than that.
We are in 100% agreement on this. So I think that the rule is we have to drink when we agree. So I'm going to pour myself a shot real quick. And I do want to, I'm not quite done with this subject quite yet. I think a couple more things I want to say on it. But I don't think you'll disagree with those things. So I'm going to pour a shot and... Okay, Payne needs to urinate. We're not cutting these things out. Okay, so we're going to take a shot and Payne is going to talk while we do that because we agreed. And that's not supposed to happen, I don't think.
Yeah, so it's actually in the contract. So.
It is. One of us has to change right now our opinions.
All right, I guess I will take over podcasts for a quick minute. So yeah, this is paid time.
Wow, it's a good thing we're here. We didn't pregame before, so I'm going to actually go ahead and take another extra shot real quick.
Brandon is going to get super hammered, and then we're going to get him on Devin's side. And that's going to be this podcast.
Okay. Everybody. Keep going, I'm still drinking. One of you two.
Alright, sorry. Alright, so, yeah, I think it's going pretty well. I urinated.
Okay, that's enough.
He did do that.
Okay,
I urinated.
So I completely agree with everything you just said. I think that there are definitely exceptions. I don't disregard that at all. I think everybody should be open to take the job they are, or to go down the path that they think they should. Well, as long as, of course, you're not infringing upon other people while you do it. That's a given, I think.
Like, serial killer is not a valid career path.
Well, well, they can definitely... No, they can't make money anymore. They changed that, actually. It used to be they could basically sell their story and make money off killing people. Can't do that anymore. So, I guess it's not valid anymore as a career path. Yeah. At one point in time...
unless someone pays you to do it.
Well, there was that... What's the guy with the ice pick? He was pretty big. He was a mafia guy. Hitman.
I thought he killed the shit ton of people. For a second.
Oh. Of course you did.
It's a nice axe.
But, no, there are definitely exceptions to the rule. This is, I think, we'll probably touch upon, I'll do this first, then we'll touch upon that, what I was about to say. But, I think we agree with that, but my main problem is, therefore, I don't see the purpose in society trying to force women down fields that they don't want to go down.
Oh, you shouldn't force people to go down fields they don't want to go down.
I should have said force. Trying to I think it's a waste of money to be just like propagandizing the STEM fields to females. I think maybe at one point it had a purpose when like we first opened it up to them. Then fair enough, they're behind in that sense, so that's fine. I think at this point, it's been long enough. They know they can do it if they want to.
Well, see, I think it's still there to kind of further break down the stigma, which I think is fair.
I don't think there's a stigma anymore. There was at one point. Don't get me wrong. Companies are striving to hire women, especially in like the STEM field, because there's kind of like quotas basically at this point. They are trying to get more women. It's just they're not showing up, and I'm not saying they're not showing up like skill wise. It's not something they seem to be interested in as a general rule. So it seems to me that it's kind of counterproductive.
I don't know. Again, you do have exceptions, and it is important to the women that are that, or rather, it's important that women know that they can, that is an option that is open to them, and I think it's important to keep stigma, like, if the stigma is broken down, which I don't think it entirely is. From a hiring perspective, I think we've made strides, but from a societal and the communities surrounding certain STEM fields, that there is still kind of a stigma against women in the field, or like it's seen as something a little strange, or maybe not quite well, in some cases probably looked down upon because some people are kind of shitty, but in general, just kind of that there's still this vibe of that's not really a woman's job, that kind of might hurt consideration.
I could see that. I mean, I'm sure that definitely exists. I think as a general rule, it's pretty much been broken up, and I'm sure there's still a fair amount of that happening. I wouldn't disagree with that. I think to more refine the point I'm trying to make is, I think what we're doing today when we're saying why is for instance, I'm a computer science major, why is the programming or like software engineer field not 50% made up of women? It must therefore be sexist. No, that's not what's happening. They are trying their damnedest to hire more women so that they don't appear sexist. I think stigmatizing that's the right word. Stigmatizing companies or fields because it's not a 50-50 split is just, it's harmful to society as a whole.
I think expecting a 50-50 split is kind of unfair. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen, but in certain fields, because as we've said, there are some fields that women tend not to go into,
and there's some that they tend to go into in large amount. I think it's like 90% of nurses are female. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just they like Payne said, they tend to correspond to agreeableness. I mean, nursing is probably like the best example of a high agreeable field. I mean, you're literally taking care of other people. Right. I hate using they because it sounds bad. Females tend to find a lot of meaning in that, and I think that's a very beautiful thing that they strive towards helping other people. I think, and that's another problem I have with the whole like quota thing is, I think a lot of what modern feminism has done is they've kind of taken the beauty out of femininity. They've said, why are you want to be a nurse? Go into a STEM field and make more money. I think it's a lot of ways it's be more like a man, and I don't see why that's a good thing.
I think I'll go ahead and throw this out here. I think modern feminism gets a bad rap. I think there are certain people who are very, very loud, who put some ideas out there that, like you said, are kind of basically, as you said, with the forcing women to go into a certain field or pushing for women to go into a certain field. I think the important thing, and honestly, I think the thing that feminism focuses on more, it's not really something that's as loud or as attention grabbing, is just giving them the option, making sure they have the option, destigmatizing role or jobs that may or may not be traditionally female, And I think that's important. We both agreed that was important.
Yeah, completely.
I think...
which is why I'm very much a first wave feminist. This the second and third waves that I have a problem with.
I genuinely disagree. I think, like any movement, you do have voices that are counterproductive, but in general, I think feminism is positive.
Like modern feminism is positive. Just to
feminism in general, but
there's three distinct waves. The second one is the one I'm not very familiar with. I don't understand a lot of the second. I haven't actually looked into it. But the first and third waves I'm fairly familiar with, and they're very different beasts. I don't mean beasts in a bad way. I just mean they're very different things. First wave was very much about equality under the law, which I am in full favor of. I think. Oh well, actually, I do want to talk about this at some point, but it's not important right now. I think there were arguments against women's suffrage that I don't think are the common arguments. I don't think they're the straw man arguments. I don't agree with them, but I think there are arguments that most people haven't heard or even know exist that are actually fairly good arguments against women's suffrage. At the time, not in general. You know what? Let's get into this because that's going to sound bad if I just leave it be. Okay, so. A lot of women, at the time when they gained suffrage, did not want suffrage. And there were reasons for that. Because it was considered to be a privilege that came along with a certain amount of responsibilities. Being part of fire brigades. Being a part of the draft. There's more, I just can't remember off the top of my head. There were things that were assumed to come with suffrage. And women did not want those responsibilities. In general, at that time, did not want those responsibilities. And I think it was like, I can't remember the number. It was a very high percentage of women did not want suffrage because of those reasons. At that time. I think everybody, actually, in this society, I have a different view of suffrage. But in this particular society, everybody should be allowed to vote. I realize I've just opened another can of worms in terms of what I just said.
In what society should everyone not be allowed to vote?
I've been toying with this idea. And again, I say toying with because it's not been fully fleshed out in my mind. It's something I'm just thinking about. And I think this is a podcast where we are allowed to think, right? I think we speak. I think. Well, what I'm saying is we can think kind of without stigmatism, right? We're not going to judge each other.
Maybe a little.
Okay, but not unwarrantedly, right? I don't.
Right.
Okay. I mean, you've said multiple times that you don't believe property is a right. That's very fundamentally a problem I have.
I don't believe that private property...
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say it, but I was just kind of generalizing. I understand that it's a nuanced view of yours. I don't mean to put it in a bad way, but I disagree with that.
I don't want to take your toothbrush.
I disagree. But what if I hire someone to brush my teeth, Devin? Yeah.
Why would you do that?
No. Don't avoid the question. Okay, but I'm just joking. But my main thing is we
what a dentist is.
I think a lot of thinking happens through.
Wow, my eyes have been opened.
But I think a lot of true thinking happens through speech.
Okay.
Right, like you have to be able to bounce these ideas off others,
right.
And some of the times these ideas are terrible, but you might not realize they're terrible until you kind of get the feedback from a different person. So that's why I think free speech is the highest.
Sometimes even saying them out loud. Once you say them out loud, you're like,
exactly. I completely agree. So that's why I'm very much a proponent of free speech. I think it's probably the most important thing there is.
I think we should have an entire podcast dedicated to free speech.
I think we should too. But okay, so I think I like the idea of the Starship Troopers Society. I think it works in a lot of ways. I think something that is given is something that is given without. Here, something that is given has no value, in my opinion. I think if you actually have to work for the franchisement, that you are going to appreciate that vote in a way that you wouldn't if you just turn 18 and get it. I think everybody should be open to obtaining that literally every single person should have the option to do their civic service to obtain their right to suffrage, their right to vote. But I think I kind of like the idea of earning it. I think that would lead to a better society.
I think, firstly, that is a death of the author hot take if I've ever heard one on
As
Starship.
what? I'm sorry?
Death of the author hot take if I've ever heard one on Starship Troopers.
What do you, how so?
I'm pretty sure the society in Starship Troopers was not written to be positive, but
well, he was actually fleshing out his ideas in a very good way, and very much fleshing out his idea. It's basically a treatise on government when you actually get down to it. It really is. There is this whole portrayal of the Starship Troopers universe being fascist. I don't understand that. It doesn't make sense to me. I haven't heard an argument as to why it actually is fascistic. I think it is very much a you earn your citizenship. I think in some ways, was it Rome? You had to earn it through military service? Am I making that up? At some point, I'm pretty sure they did.
I think you could earn.
If you weren't born into it, you could earn it.
People of upper classes could vote regardless, but you could serve in the military and get the right to vote.
Okay, well, I disagree with the whole upper class being born into it. I don't agree with that. I think every individual having to earn their right to vote. I think in a lot of ways it makes sense to me. Once again, I'm still working on this idea. It's not a set in stone thing.
I'm going to be honest. Like, as such, I get where you're coming from. I think there are problems with it. And
I want to hear them because
the
I want to hear
execution. Putting that in the hands of the state, I disagree with. Because you have the potential there for abuse of that system, for the state to say certain people have to do certain things, or if we don't want someone to be able to vote, that the job they have to complete is something astronomical. Whereas, like, you could get it
has popped into my
an
mind.
even hand, and I don't necessarily trust a state to keep an even hand. That
I do. I have actually thought about that as one of the problems. You have to keep in mind, I think, that state is also made up of people who did their time and understand the process of it. I think that is an important thing to keep in mind.
Fair, but I still don't think I still think the potential for abuse is too high there.
Well, I think there's a potential for abuse in literally every governmental structure.
Absolutely, but
unless you're going to argue, well, then again, you might argue for no government at all. But I do think government is a necessity, and I'm not completely at odds. I think the execution was wrong. The founding fathers, the way they originally did it, if I remember correctly, is you had to be a landowner. By being a landowner, you therefore had very much a tangible stake in the country.
Right.
I think the idea was right. The execution was wrong, in my opinion.
See, if I can just basically run the idea you just threw out there, kind of run it by through another lens.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't essentially what you're advocating for basically that you have to take part in society to vote?
No, I don't think so. Because you can take part in society and not do your civic service. You could open up a business I'm going to work from a capitalist perspective because that's what we. I mean, you may disagree with it, but that is what we know, right? That is what society we've grown up in. So you can open up a business and contribute to society in that way, but you haven't necessarily done a civic service. You haven't necessarily completed your civic service. So I'm not sure. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your argument, but I don't. I think you contribute to society without actually partaking in a civic service.
Well, it comes down to what exactly do you mean by civic service?
Well, in Starship Troopers, it was military service, but keep in mind they were at war at the time. So I mean, that is the most likely. There, if I remember correctly, when he wrote about it in a non-at-war perspective, there were other ways of obtaining civic service. Like, I mean, it could be infrastructure. It could be literally anything almost. But they had to have served the actual state at some point for, I think it was 2 years, if I remember correctly, and then they had full citizenship.
I do think, and I just thought of this,
But it wasn't forced. Keep that in mind. They could opt out of it. They did not have to do it. In fact, if I remember correctly, they were actually discouraged from it because that was part of it. You had to actually really want this to actually gain it.
I also think that depending on the service required, that it kind of removes people with certain disabilities from being able to vote, which is kind of a problem, I think.
No, literally, okay, maybe if it was applied badly. And I'm not a utopian. Things can be applied badly, of course, but just looking at the actual idea of it, if there's plenty of jobs for people who are disabled in some way, correct? I mean, we could find something if we were setting up the system for people who were disabled. We could find some way for them to contribute. I don't think that's impossible.
I don't know.
I mean, even in the military, logistic-wise, there's something they can do.
I just feel like the benefit of placing more value on a vote doesn't outweigh the potential problems.
That's fair. But my critique of that critique would be, there's no perfect system. There's going to be a potential problems. If you can set up a system of, like we have in the United States, checks and balances, something like a Bill of Rights for that service particularly, where, hey, if you could, I'm going to present a very strict reading of this system, and I just want to see if you disagree with it inherently. If you could ensure that everybody has an equal opportunity to partake of the system, do you think it's a bad idea? I'm just curious. I'm not trying to trap anything. I'm just curious.
I still generally think that universal suffrage is preferable.
Okay, that's fair. But okay, I don't. I mean, we disagree.
I think there are other ways to put emphasis and value on the vote, because I think one reason that a lot of people tend to not value suffrage as much is that they don't feel like it has any real influence. The voter apathy is overwhelming.
Well, actually, I'm a little curious. Well, if you had something more to add to that, go ahead. Then I'll ask my question.
I was just going to say that it's a lot of people have the idea that they're not going to vote because they don't think it'll make a difference. Mm. So, I think if the goal is to make voting more impactful or come across as more of an important thing, that there are other ways to emphasize the vote. And I think, personally, incorporating more direct democracy is a good way to do that in any system that has voting. Because when you see the direct results, you're less likely to be apathetic about your vote.
Okay. Based on that was a fairly general statement, so I'm going to say generality. That was a generality, right? I mean, I don't want to...
Absolutely.
Okay, so I do have a problem with that. I would have to know how you are going to make it a more direct democracy before I would actually have a... How would you make... Let's go based on the United States system. How would...
Abolish the Electoral College.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I would have very much a problem with that.
I think there are a lot of steps you need to take before you do that.
Okay. Well, even then, I think that's again, Devin, good friend, that's a terrible idea, in my opinion. I don't...
Or maybe reform the Electoral College.
In what way? I don't think we're not policy guys by any means. Yeah, so I don't expect you to have I don't expect you to
on this. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I don't expect you to write up a bill for me. But I just think, in general,
I think in general, the problem that you have with the Electoral College is more or less that it's exactly what I was talking about with voter apathy. That there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect from people's vote and what actually happens. And I think that discourages voting, honestly. I think it's when you know that you could vote one way and that the people around you could vote one way, and that there is still, it's extremely unlikely, but there's still the potential that your representative could vote the other way, that there's kind of a disconnect there. It's you feel like your voice isn't being heard, or your voice has less value in the system because of that. Now, as far as how to reform the Electoral College without outright abolishing it,
or if you want to abolish, just tell me what you replace it with in some general area, because I think the Electoral College is a very, very good system for deciding the elected branch of our government, for deciding the presidency.
I think it does have its purpose. I understand why it's there, because otherwise large population areas tend to swing everything.
I appreciate that. Don't get me. I do appreciate that you realize that.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of arguments against the Electoral College that are not even get to that point.
I know why it's there. It's just at the same time, I think, and again, I'm not a policy.
Yeah, neither am I. It's fine.
Juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination. But at the very least, you could broaden how the Electoral College works to some extent. It could be less, I don't know. Individual representatives comes across a little weird when you're approaching it from the angle of this is supposed to be the country the people voting for something.
That's not what it's supposed to be, though.
I mean, that is the idea behind a democratic system.
It's not a democratic.
It's not. It's a republic.
Yeah. So
but
I think there's
when you try to sell voting as a democratic system,
you should. I agree. I hate when people who tend to be like not Republican in party, but Republican in terms of like democratic structure, like proclaim us to be a democracy. We are by no means a democracy, and I do not like people who actually think along the lines of a republic referring to it as democracy. I think it gives the wrong idea to the voters. I think it's very much misleading.
However, I do like democracy.
I do not. Not in terms of direct democracy. Just to get that across.
I don't know. Maybe a broadening of the Electoral College. I just keep hitting the brick wall of just abolish the Electoral College and maybe change how votes work.
That's fine. I don't think it's a bad thing. You see. I think that's really what it comes down to. What a lot of this podcast comes down to is you see a problem with the system. I see the merits of the system, and then left and right in terms of hierarchy. I think that's a lot of what we talk about.
There's hierarchy again.
Oh shit, we have to drink. Okay. So after I drink, I do want to give, go ahead if you have more thoughts on it. I want to give my thoughts on the Electoral College.
Okay. So,
Payne or Devin? Payne hasn't said anything in a while, so Payne, comment on what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
with who?
No, don't worry about it. No, with who though? I mean, come on now. People want to hear the voice of Payne. The voice of Payne.
The House of Pain.
Where have I heard that before? Is that a band or an album?
It was a rap group.
That's not that. That's
it was. They did Jump Around.
Oh yeah, that is what I'm thinking of. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah.
Give your general thoughts before I go into mine on the voting system of specifically right now we're talking about the presidency. So do you think we have a good system? If you don't know, that's fine. You're not even a voting age yet, so you don't really have to. It's fine.
Well, I mean, it's like Devin said. I think the Electoral College is good in a sense that the alternative may be popular vote, and then the candidates would just go to those states with highest population and only focus on the interest of those populations. So that's really what my opinion is on it. so far.
Okay, actually, keep talking because I need to look up a specific number. It's not an argument. I just need to look up the specific amendment that I have a problem with real quick. So someone keep talking real quick. Again,
I actually thought up a potential idea for actual implementation that also has large capacity for potential abuse, so it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
Against what? I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
An alternative to the electoral.
Oh, okay.
Which is not really that different, but I think incorporates basically break it down to, I mean, we could go counties, we could go smaller.
You want to go counties? You'll never win an election, Devin. I hate to break it to you. I would love to go counties. That'd be great. Never have another left president in the history of the United States. I can almost guarantee it.
But essentially, you break it down into smaller groups that are voted for through direct democracy. And then basically the individual vote within that area is that region's vote. It's their representative vote.
Okay, I you know what? I'm actually going to argue against my political beliefs because I think that would help my side.
Okay,
but
and why is that?
Because in terms of small areas, if you look at the actual map of the country, that map is fucking red.
Oh, like, yeah, no, rural areas tend to be...
So, I guess it would depend on how you break it up if it actually helped me or not, in terms of, like, policy.
Gerrymandering is the name of the game here. No, but gerrymandering is the large screaming problem with that system.
See, actually, I do want to touch on that after we get to this.
Gerrymandering?
Not, it's more of an something that gerrymandering builds upon. An idea that I've heard someone talk about, but I was actually surprised that I agreed with. So, real quick. So, my thoughts on the electoral college before we get to that is, we are not a nation of people. We are a nation of states. The United States of America. This is supposed to be in
Sounds like Confederate propaganda, but okay.
I've been reading the Federalist Papers. I think they're. There are some problems I have with the Federalist Papers, but they're very few and not really that important overall. But I think the idea of the what is it called, the walking vote, that's not right. It's basically you vote by moving in this system. That's the main way. The states are not supposed to be the same. They're supposed to be almost individual experiments upon what is the best form of government. Texas should be different from Oklahoma. Oklahoma should be different from Kansas. And Kansas is definitely different from California. And I think that's good. There's what it comes down to is there's basically something for everybody. If everybody moves to that state, it's because that system probably works better than the other states. The walking vote, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. I could be I could be
I think I've heard that before.
Do what?
I think I've heard that before.
I think that's right. I think that's right. We are supposed to be individual states that make up a nation. And I think that is very much what the Electoral College represents. And that's what I pulled up. Again, to emphasize this, I will never pull up, I don't think either of these two will, either, we'll never go to the internet to find an argument. We'll look up something specific that we don't remember, right? I think that's, I think actually that's a major point of this podcast is, this is very much off the cuff. We are arguing purely what we actually think, not what the internet tells us. I think that's important to throw out there. This is individuals talking, not the internet talking, from one side to the other. The block is hitting me, if no one can tell at this point. But the 17th Amendment is, I think, probably the worst thing that's happened in this country. The 17th Amendment was, let me reemphasize that, in terms of impacting the political climate of the country. That's probably not the best way to phrase it. That's what I'm going to do.
So, what you're saying is...
Slavery was bad. I feel like that's where we're going with this.
I was going for the 17th Amendment.
Yeah.
Worse than 9/11.
Oh, okay. I meant
Brandon
like,
Loud in 2018.
I guess I should say like something that was passed by our country. I guess it's the worst law that I can think of. I think Roe v. Wade was bad. Yeah, no, that's not important. That's not a law that was passed. That was a judicial. Okay. Anyway, the 17th Amendment was that the senators are elected by the people. That is not what the senators are there for. The senators were originally there to represent the states they come from, not the people necessarily of the state, the states themselves. They were there to emphasize states' rights. After this, senators are basically representatives. There's almost no purpose to a bicameral legislature at this point. I'm slurring a little bit, and I apologize. Bicameral legislature. There's almost no purpose to it. They're both basically houses of representatives. I think it's important to have representation from both the people and the states themselves. I think the 17th Amendment is in many ways the worst thing related to something we passed that has happened in this country. I think it's very bad. So my
Prohibition was pretty whack.
Prohibition was bad. I don't disagree. I think the 17th Amendment was worse, but it was there. I don't agree with the Prohibition either. But the Senate exists, or it originally exists, to represent the states. The states are there so that literally, like I said, they are experiments within the country as to what actually works. I can't think of any more to add to that. That's just my opinion on it. I don't.
Well, I think it's important to, even when you break it down like that, that within the states themselves, the state does not function without the people of the state.
Well, yes, but the people elect the Congress of that state, who then elect the Senate or the senator of that state. It still goes through the people, but it goes through the people in a way that the state has influence over that.
Well, you said the word state and influence, and I'm going to be honest with you, Brandon. I can't. It's in the contract.
Well, again, I'm
not getting my Soros money if I don't.
Well, again, I don't want Oklahoma to be like Texas, even though I agree with Texas. That's probably the state I moved to if I had to move out of here. I don't want Texas to be like Kansas, and again, I'll go to California. Each state should be its own microcosm. And I think that's probably the best system for everybody having a place to go to where they actually agree with it, at least in some major way.
What the fuck was that?
I don't know. Fucking ghost.
All right.
Thomas Jefferson?
Too drunk.
Okay, but you see what I'm saying? I think it's important for states to be different. And I think without states having a representative, without states having representation, they eventually just evolve into clones of other states, which is very much what's happening. I think in a lot of ways what's happening nowadays is red states are just becoming red states and blue states are becoming blue states. And there's the occasional purple state, but it's pretty much one or the other. I don't think there's individual states so much anymore in terms of political alignment or in terms of political.
I don't necessarily know that the 17th Amendment is what caused that, though.
Well, it's what turned the Senate. It's what made the senators elected by a popular vote instead of
but I don't know that really causes the individual states to become more homogenized.
I disagree because at that point the senators become what's the word, responsible to and answerable. They become answerable to the people instead of to the state itself, and I think that is really what that did.
I think the kind of breakdown of or the homogenization of states. Honestly, I think advances in technology in general probably played a bigger part in why that is, like why states have become more homogenized, because you don't just have the communities that live in those states doing their own thing separately. And I do think that there's still, there are large differences from, Alabama and Maine, for instance.
Yeah. No, I think they're becoming less. Well, and Maine's kind of a purple state, is it not?
I meant culturally, but
Yeah, culturally, yeah. I'm talking political wise, though.
I'm not really sure. Political.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Much about.
Who cares about Maine? They're basically Canada.
They're Canada Light, but they got Stephen King and lobsters. And I know how you feel about lobsters, Brandon.
I haven't tried them. I will eventually. Payne, you need to say something. Hurry.
That was a Jordan Peterson joke.
Oh, hierarchy. Yes, hierarchy has existed for millennia, and it will continue to exist no matter what you do about it. Payne, say something while I pour myself a drink.
Okay, something.
You're really bad about this. You're not. You need to work on your
monologue.
Yeah, your monologues. The Payne monologues.
Well, I mean, I only have 15 seconds to say whatever.
It takes longer than that for us to pour drinks.
Well, yeah, but you can't just pop up with some super random thing.
Maybe you should just do a Moby Dick quote.
I was actually gonna say you should write these out beforehand, and then whenever we go to you,
they say that Ahab's torn body and his gashed soul, bled together. That's what made him insane.
Word.
I know, right? That's some powerful stuff.
That is some powerful
stuff.
stuff.
Talk about poetry and wailing.
Poetry
Honor
and wailing.
And glory and wailing. Let's talk about that. You know that
we
whaling,
actually got to the whales.
Do you know that whaling, it pretty much fueled the Industrial Revolution?
Well, yeah,
oil?
Literally fueled the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
What, like whale oil?
Yeah.
Really? I'm not familiar enough with it. Is that really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was super important.
I don't know why I found that so funny the way you said that.
Some use of the internal combustion engine actually saved the whales.
Oh.
Because they didn't need whale oil anymore.
I'm learning something new.
I could quote something right now about.
Well, I'm taking the shots. Go.
All right.
Out of time. No, I'm joking. Go.
Okay. For God's sakes, be economical with your lamps and candles. Not a gallon you burn. For at least for a drop of man's blood was spilled for it. I think is what it is. Because pretty fucking dangerous stuff. Whaling, that is. Ishmael.
Are you
that.
still in the quote? Is that?
No.
I loved when Herman Melville said, "Pretty dangerous stuff, whaling."
Man feels. Am I misquoting? Man feels a draw to the sea. What is that?
I don't know if he says it exactly like that, but that is the first chapter. He talks about. Yeah, he talks about that, like how the sea calls to you.
Well, what is the sea but chaos?
Oh.
Order is the land.
Oh.
He actually does say
Oh.
that. Yeah, he makes an analogy to
I
the
don't know
human
why
spirit.
that goes from what you were doing there. Drunken Dialectics.
Drunken Dialectics.
He actually does say that though in Brit chapter titled Brit.
Like a Brit?
No, it's
Britain,
like
or is there a
it's
name Brit?
Brit is it's like a yellow substance that whales feed on it, I believe, and it's kind of scattered throughout the sea. Anyway, so he does make that analogy. He says that the sea's chaos, and then God's green earth, land is order. Or he says it similar to that, and then he compares, man, facing the unknown, and in himself as order, which is
Well, it's very
wrong
much
in a lot of ways, but right in ways that are poetic.
No, I mean, I think it's right in general in terms of symbology.
Yeah.
I mean, in most, there are some
Good
exceptions.
use of symbology.
Thank you. In most. Wait, was that?
No,
Okay.
that is one of the most misused words in the English language, I think.
But in most instances of symbology, the water is chaos and the land is order. I mean, I think the Tao Te Ching, if I'm remembering where this thing came from exactly, what is it? The circle with the black and white. What is that called? Yin Yang.
Yin Yang?
Is that from the Tao Te Ching? That's from Taoism, correct?
I believe so.
I think that's a foundational truth. That's correct. There is order and there is chaos, and then there's the dots of both in between. Actually, I want to touch on this at some point. I don't think we'll get to it today, but actually, I'll throw it out there real quick. Especially in the most ordered structure, which would be authoritarian, correct? There is a sort of it's authoritarian at the utmost. But on the individual level, it's chaos because you don't actually know what's going to happen when you do something. Because the authority is so strong that they could, for instance, in the USSR, they could arrest you for anything. At the individual level, it's chaos, even in the utmost tyranny. You get what I'm saying with that?
I think that's an intentional influence of highly authoritarian governments.
No, I agree. But what I'm getting at is that little dot, right? In the black, there's that little dot of white. In the white, there's that little dot of black. In the extremes of both, what ends up happening, it seems to me, is in the extremes of tyranny, there is the extreme chaos. In the extreme chaos, there is the extreme tyranny.
I would agree.
I just thought that was interesting. I'm just throwing that out there real quick.
And that kind of ties into when you asked me. I think this is in the Fabled Lost podcast, unfortunately. But,
yeah, we'll get back to God, chaos, and the human
soul. The question of if chaos created everything, then why is there order? In that, to be truly chaotic, at some point it has to produce ordered creations.
So you're saying one extreme cannot exist without the other?
Yeah, no. Total chaos will eventually create order within itself at some point, because otherwise it's not chaotic. It's sticking to a rule of nothing can be created that has order.
I like what you just said. I don't even like it in like a way that I think I'm like catching on. I
sounded pretty cool, right?
It did. It was very good. Actually, and I want to throw something out there. Okay, so this is something I heard, and I thought it was very profound when I heard it. What is the one thing?
Okay.
What's the word? I'm sorry, listeners. Let me think of the word real quick. What is the one thing a God, in the sense of God as is generally understood, right? Mm. So let's just take, I don't even believe in this, but gray bearded guy in the sky, right? What is the one thing he lacks?
A shave.
That's true.
No, come on. Give me a non-meme answer. I that was funny. Give me a non-meme answer.
I mean, if he's omnipotent.
Yes.
And omniscient.
Yes. What is the one thing he lacks?
The ability to not know?
That's a good answer, but I don't think it's correct. That is a very good answer. And once again, I did not come up with this on my own. I thought it was very profound when I heard it. I had to think about it for a long time after I heard it. It was very deep in my opinion. Okay, so an omniscient, omnipresent God, what does he lack? Limitation.
Okay.
The physical world is limitation. I'm probably not putting this forward in the most correct way. But so you're saying one thing cannot exist without the other. If we therefore are limited beings, must there be something that is without limits? Based upon what you just said about one thing cannot exist without its opposite.
I would say yes.
Okay, probably. I'm not trying to trap you. I am Drunken Dialectics, and I just want to throw that out there real quick. Okay, I thought it was very profound when I heard it. I could be wrong.
No, I like that.
It's something to think about, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. Okay, so back to the topic we were at before I
personality.
Oh yeah, we haven't hit the Myers-Briggs.
Oh, we haven't hit the That's a fun thing to do real quick.
All right.
Real quick, just to recap, we got to the agreement that exceptions do exist, but nature does play a part. I think that's fairly middle ground for both of us. Then we moved on to the electoral college at some point. I think that's something we're just going to probably disagree on. We'll probably get back to it. I think we should probably dedicate a whole podcast to that in itself. So I think from there, Myers-Briggs. So, okay, so let me pull mine up. I don't remember my specific letters. Penny, do you have yours?
Yeah.
So I guess go ahead and say it.
You want me to just name them all, or what do you want me to?
There's a 4-letter thing that basically sums it up. So just, for instance, I am. I don't remember. Go ahead.
It's 5.
Do what?
It's 5. Because you have the first 4.
Oh,
and then
there's
you have the hyphen.
there's like a dash.
Yeah.
But okay, so yeah, they're 4-5.
Okay. So.
I'm confused.
What did you get?
Oh, here. Oh, you just took a screenshot. Okay, so just to help you, you are INFJ dash T. INFJ dash T.
And there's also a title for these, although I think the titles are split as well. I think that last letter is like a division between the titles.
The last letter is from what I understand, it's like a sort of like how set are you in your beliefs. From what I understand of it, it's assertive / turbulent. Yeah, so if you're more turbulent, you're less set. Basically, if you're assertive, you are fairly set in your beliefs. So repeat what it is.
Okay, INFJ-T. Is that correct?
And real quick, I am less familiar. I'm much less familiar with this than you. So you are. I apologize, listeners. I'm going to have to repeat that. INFJ
Dash T.
dash T. Okay. Look that up real quick. The Advocate. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Okay. And Devin?
I am.
So I can get this all pulled up so we can go from it.
INFP T, which is the mediator.
You are very. That's a very good descriptive word for you, in my opinion. You know, let's go into it while I'm pulling all this stuff up. A quick backstory related thing. So I've played games online with Devin for a while, and we have a kind of a group we play with. And Devin is very much the guy who does not. We have a couple of guys who argue with each other constantly, and Devin is very much the guy who will not get involved in those arguments. Is the best way I can phrase that.
Try to diffuse it at times, but
yes,
sometimes it's just
he's not someone who's going to get upset for no good reason. I guess is the best way I can describe it. He's very much a mediator. I think that's a very good word to describe it. Wow, so we are all different. I'm a little surprised by that, although I'm not sure why. So I am INTP, which is the logician, which I think fits in fairly well because I'm not a feelings-based person. So I think I'll probably go ahead and read the first paragraph of each of these real quick.
okay.
So I'll go ahead and start with mine. The logician personality type is fairly rare, making up only 3% of the population, which is definitely a good thing for them, as there's nothing they'd be more unhappy about than being common. Logicians pride themselves on their inventiveness and creativity, their unique perspective and vigorous intellect. Usually known as the philosopher, the architect, or the dreaming professor, logicians have been responsible for many scientific discoveries throughout history. I wouldn't describe myself as a philosopher. Just to throw that out there, I'm not sucking my own tail. But I am very much a scientific-based thinker. I'm very much a what's the word? physical, tangible.
Tangible.
Maybe. I think very much. I guess rational. I hate to use the word, but rational. I'm very much a rational thinker in terms of not feelings based at all, which I think is kind of summed up in there. So Payne is the advocate. I'll go ahead and read that real quick. The advocate personality type is very rare, making up less than 1% of the population. Wow.
Hello.
Whoa. But they nonetheless leave their mark on the world. Wow. You got great things in store for you, apparently. Jeez. As members of the diplomat role group, advocates have an inborn sense of idealism and morality. But what sets them apart is that they are not idle dreamers, but people capable of taking concrete steps to realize their goals and make up a lasting positive impact. Okay, so real quick, one of the things that I actually have a problem with the Myers-Briggs is that it almost reads like a horoscope in some senses. You know what I'm saying?
Some extent, yeah.
But actually, you know what? As someone who's known you for a long time, that actually does fit you pretty well, Payne. Okay. So fair enough. I'll give it to you. That sums up Payne fairly well. He is very much someone who is unconcrete in the thinking part, but concrete in the application. Is the best way I can think. It's the best way I can sum it up. It's okay. So let's go to Devin. The mediator personality. Mediator personalities are true idealists, always looking for the hint of good in even the worst of people and events. You know what? I'm less sold on the horoscope theory as I was before we started this, because it's fit us all fairly well. Searching for ways to make things better. While they may be perceived as calm, reserved, and even shy, mediators have an inner flame and passion that can truly shine. Comprising just 4% of the population, the risk of feeling misunderstood is unfortunately high for the mediator personality type. But when they find like-minded people to spend their time with, the harmony they feel will be a fountain of joy and inspiration. Okay, so I am actually much more sold on the Myers-Briggs than I was about 5 minutes ago, because that is very applicable to all of us.
When you get into the more detailed sections of it too, it's almost eerie.
Yeah, I am just reading the first paragraph of each of these. They are actually as I do have problems with the Myers-Briggs in terms that it splits you basically 50-50. If you're 51% introverted, then you're introverted. But even though you're probably much less introverted than 49% of the population, so you're not really that introverted. So that's my main problem, is that it splits you 50-50, while the Big Five doesn't. But I did compare it to a horoscope, and if I do have to do that, it is very much the most accurate horoscope there is. It's pretty good. It's very good for general ideas, in my opinion. I think the Big Five is better for specifics, but in terms of generalities, the Myers-Briggs definitely has a place. Someone talk while I relight my cigar.
Yeah, no, I think the Myers-Briggs is good for giving a general idea, and I like the way that they split personality types, and I imagine a lot of work went into it, but the way the archetypes that they have are given is it's detailed, but it's also there's enough leeway that there's room for slightly different people to be in the same group.
Well, that's why I compare it to a horoscope, is because it's I could find parts of the mediator personality that I am a part of. I could find parts of the advocate personality that I'm part of. I bring those two up because those two I have in front of me. But it's a little too vague for me to actually base anything upon. I do think it's very good for generalities, but it's just a little too vague for me to be scientific about. Partially because I'm a logician. So.
I feel like it's a good starting point, if nothing else.
Oh, I agree. It definitely has its place. Yeah. Hey, this podcast was your idea in terms of the personality, and you're just sitting over there.
I'm having fun. Having a good time.
What do you think about what we just talked about here?
Yeah, I think it's, like you said, it's good for generalities.
Yeah, okay. And
one thing I do like that the test does further down is it gives you examples of people who fall in that group, and it's interesting to look at.
It's very good in terms of that. Like I said, the problem with the test we took for the Big Five is that the test itself isn't like the best test. I think the Big Five is the best model. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like the actual test of this specific website, and we'll post the links to what we used. But this like website is very good for actually explaining everything. If we had an in-depth explanation of the Big Five, I think it'd be better. But it's hard to find a free one that's actually good for in-depth explanations. But I do agree, they do a very good job of like really going deep into what each of the 16 different subtypes are. Okay, so I guess I'll keep going.
Well, we could do something else with this website if you want.
What do you mean?
Well, we could, for fun, look at some people that are also a part of the personality.
Oh yeah, okay. I'll scroll down. You guys keep talking while I find that specific webpage.
All right. So, Devin, do you know a couple already that are?
I looked at it a few days ago. I don't remember a lot of them. For some reason, the only one I remember that was in the subtype or was on the list was Johnny Depp. For some reason, I'm not really sure why, but he was there. But I think I think the cool thing with the or one thing I think that the Myers-Briggs test kind of has over the Big Five, at least the one we took, is it gives. I feel like it gives you more of an answer immediately, whereas the Big Five you kind of have to interpret the information that it gives you and figure out what it means exactly.
I think that's more the problem with the website itself than with the actual model. But that is true. Like I said, okay, so the website for the Myers-Briggs, 16personalities.com, is a very good website. They do a very good job with giving you a ton of information about where you fall. I think the Big Five is better as a model, but website-wise, hands down, Myers-Briggs is way better. So I pulled up the people you may know in terms of your personality type. So I think it's a good idea. We should go over that. So let's start with, who was the mediator? Devin? Mm-hmm. Okay, so William Shakespeare, J.R.R. Tolkien, Bjork.
Yeah, Bjork.
So very much the artist. I think that's what it comes down to. But in many ways, the mediator. So you have anything to...
I think that's interesting. Shout out Bjork.
I'm not familiar with Bjork's work. Didn't she almost get killed by somebody who was like a psychopath?
I think so. She had some like really crazy stuff.
I think that was like a famous case. Okay.
Was that the guy that like shot himself on camera?
Dialectics.
Wait, what?
I think that was the guy that like shot himself on cam.
I think you might be right. That sounds very familiar.
I'm pretty sure that was that was. I'm dying. Sorry. That was Bjork that he was like obsessed with.
I think you're right. Okay, so Paine, the advocate. Advocates you may know: Martin Luther King.
Holy shit.
Junior. I guess I should throw that out there. I don't know why they don't include Junior on there, but Nelson Mandela.
Ooh.
Mother Teresa.
Hello.
Alanis Morissette.
I am not familiar
one of these
with
things
the
is not like the other.
I'm not familiar with the last one. I don't know.
I think she's like a pop singer, if I remember correct. Okay, so anything to... you're very much... It seems to me like you are the... Oh, man.
I think you're honorary black now.
Yes.
But more personality-wise, it almost sounds like you are... I think the advocate might be a good way to phrase that. You are like the... you might be left. I hate to say it. I'm going to lose you here, but you might be the person who is closest enough to the hierarchy to argue against it in a way that makes sense to people in the hierarchy. So I think this just popped in my head, so this is purely off the cuff.
You just said hierarchy like 3 times.
I did. Oh shit, we have to drink. Okay, well, let's get the rest of the hierarchies out of the way before I drink. So it seems to me that Devin, based on the people who are set, are people who are very much outside of the hierarchy. It almost seems like you draw from them. You see the problems from them. Like you see their arguments, and then since you understand the hierarchy, probably I don't mean this in a bad way, but understanding the hierarchy, you probably may see the hierarchy better than they do. Being outside of the hierarchy, you are able to advocate to the hierarchy, the problems of the hierarchy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think. Okay. I think that makes sense.
I was going to ask...
that was purely off the cuff, so that could be very wrong when we listen back. But
the kind of the reformer.
Yeah, kind of. Well, I don't know. I think maybe in terms of like policy-wise, the person is actually able to get that policy passed.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that makes sense. So the logician, which is me, logicians you may know, Bill Gates, Ellen Page, Kristen Stewart, and Albert Einstein.
That is a list.
I'm not sure
Those
what
are
to make of
people.
this.
Those are people on a list.
I think besides
You know what?
Kristen Stewart,
You know what? I am going. If you guys want me to do this back to you, I just now realized there is an arrow to the right, so there might be more. So I'm gonna. Oh, there's one more. Rene Descartes. So okay. I mean that's a little better for my position, I guess.
Kristen Stewart's
hey,
great.
Einstein. That's pretty
Well,
good.
yeah, I'll take Einstein. I guess Einstein and Bill Gates. I guess. I mean, okay, so.
Hi, Kristen Stewart.
So that's me.
I
really don't know what to make of that list, to be honest.
What were the additional ones on ours?
Oh yeah, I'll go back and see if there's more real quick.
Yeah, that is a.
Oh, okay. So there's more for Payne. Let me check. Jimmy Carter. Okay. Okay. And for Devon's, I lost my mouse cursor. Let me find that real quick. Okay, there it is. Julia Roberts.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of you know what I feel now.
All right.
Based on my list.
Interesting.
I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah, your list was something special.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little confused, to be honest.
I mean, now you know that you have more in common with Kristen Stewart than maybe you previously thought you did.
That's fair. I suppose. I don't think she's a very good actor, and that might be why.
That's a little harsh.
It is. I don't deny that. Okay, so
She did things that weren't Twilight, you know.
She what?
She did things that weren't Twilight, you know.
I haven't seen them. To be fair, I'm not. I'm sure
better.
she did great.
She's much better in everything that's not Twilight.
I'm sure she is. I have to work.
She actually tweeted a couple days ago. Holy shit! I just remembered I was in Twilight.
Oh really?
Which was a good time.
Okay, so Payne, personality podcast. Where do we go from here?
Well, I was gonna ask, just out of pure curiosity, breaking the rules a little bit, your guys' view on Nelson Mandela. He popped up, so I don't know. Just wanted to see if you guys had any thoughts. I've read a little bit of him, but I didn't really have any problems with him, so I was wondering if you guys.
Okay, so Nelson Mandela, Devin, I'm gonna let you start this off.
Okay. I'm gonna come out and say I don't know enough of the specifics about Mandela to like really throw out a real solid breakdown, but apartheid was bad. And I think Mandela did a lot of good things for South Africa. I think he's had a positive influence. He also gave us that wonderful... He also prevented a particular effect from being named after the Bernstein Bears, so that's good on him for that. It's the Mandela.
Okay,
it's the Mandela effect, which is something we could talk about.
You know you're not in the timeline of your world.
The world
yeah,
really,
I know, right?
the world really did end in 2012.
Holy shit! Okay, is that your answer?
Yeah, the world ended in 2012. That's how I feel about Nelson Mandela.
That's okay. Real quick shot. Okay, that's about my answer too. Oh wow. Okay. South Africa is a very bad place at the moment. I can't directly correlate that to what Mandela did, but I can say that the outcome is not good. I don't know who to blame that on. I don't know enough about the situation. But, so apartheid was bad. Was it handled the right way? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. South Africa is not a topic that I'm well versed on. That's so hate to cop out, but that's all I can.
Oh no, it's fine. I was more referring to the general beliefs that Mandela put forth.
I don't even know.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean,
Devin might. Devin.
I don't know a lot of them.
Okay.
I know the general idea, but that's about it.
Okay. Well, I was going to get into. He did believe in. He said that in life, that man has twin obligations to his family and to his society, and it depends on the government or the state or the society that allows him to fulfill those obligations. Based upon his own inclinations and abilities. And he also said that
I don't disagree with that. I don't know the context, so it might be a little. But based upon what he said, I don't disagree with that.
he also said, and I haven't really thought this out too much, but but he did say that this is somewhat going to be phrased wrong, very wrong, but I think the general idea is still there, that the racist is just as trapped as the person who is being discriminated against. It's very, very... it also relates to Kill a Mockingbird. I think that argument is also put forth from there. If I remember correctly from my freshman year.
I haven't read that yet, but I need to.
You haven't read To Kill a Fucking Mockingbird?
It wasn't required. We read Shakespeare in my high school. That's all we read.
Harper Lee, it was like Alabama had Harper Lee and Helen Keller, and that's about all we ever did. So we...
Helen Keller? What book is that?
No, Helen Keller was the
blind deaf.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a book about?
There's a book about her. Yeah. But there are lots of books about her. But she was from Alabama, and she's on her quarter, actually. So that's kind of neat. Was also a devout socialist.
Well, I mean, she was deaf and blind, so.
But yeah, no, Harper Lee. She is one of the cool things Alabama had. She wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, and then wrote another thing that the release of which was questionable. You know anything about that?
I don't.
Ghost Out of Watchmen, which I haven't read, actually. I've heard less than great things about it. Was essentially another book that she had been writing that was released, from my understanding, in her very old age. And she may or may not have had her full mental faculties at that point, and it may have been released by a caretaker. So there was a lot of debate over whether or not it was right to release it in the state it was in, and that because a lot of people didn't particularly like it. It seemed a little unfinished, if I remember correctly.
So I do have problems with. Well, this is why I think there's a reason that this isn't what you said. This is based on what Payne said about what Mandela said in terms of the racist. I think there's a reason that most of the abolitionists were Christian, and so here I'm going to get my mandatory Hebrew Bible verse in. So, okay. Shofekdam ha'adam ba'adam damau yistapeki basaim Elohim asa et ha'adim, which is, I think, we talked about last time, on the podcast that has yet to be named. Pain left at this point. Our favorite Bible verses. This is my second favorite Bible verse, which is, "Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God, he made for God made man in the image of God." Basically, the literal translation kind of throws around the order a little bit because it's a different language. I think that is the second most important. In that, literally every human is created in the image of God. You can take that as being conscious, which is, I think, the secular way to take that is through consciousness. Therefore, we are all basically have worth, right? We all have intrinsic human worth by being conscious. Again, I think that abolitionists were primarily Christian for that reason, because there were a lot of arguments around that time were based upon that certain people were not equivalent to other people. That is the argument. I don't agree with that. That is the argument.
Yeah. To be fair, society in general was also Christian, by and large, at that point. So,
I would.
Although I do realize Christian ideals played a big part. So I'm not discounting that.
I'm not saying that every reading of the Christian Bible is equivalent. I would have a hard time seeing how they would rationalize their view based upon one of what is widely considered the most important verses, which is what God said to Noah after the flood. Which I think they're called the Commandments of Noah, if I remember correctly. Which actually we talked about this. It's the 7 sins you cannot commit in Judaism, which is basically the Commandments of Noah. There are 7. I was correct on that. I was surprised that I was correct on that, but I was correct. There were 7, and one of them stems from this, which is every human is created in the image of God. Again, we can take that secular and go by pure consciousness, but I think that it is wrong. I don't think the racist is equivalent to the slave or the person who is impacted by the racism. I do think that.
I don't necessarily think that that's what that quote's saying.
Okay.
I don't think.
Quote is a strong word.
Heavy
paraphrase.
But just the phrasing used, which I assume is actually the phrasing used because it seems very specific, is just as trapped. Not equivalent, but is just as trapped, I think, by a racist institution, and that they have been more or less, there's a better word than conditioned to believe a particular thing, and that it's a slight against them as well, because they've basically been taught this growing up for their entire life, and are kind of trapped in a way of thinking that they've been conditioned to believe. And I mean, if you're conditioned to believe something constantly, it can be hard to break away from that, even if you see evidence to the contrary in many cases. Now, are they equivalent in suffering? No. And I don't necessarily think that's what the quote's trying to say.
Oh, I don't think it is either. But what I'm getting at is I think we both agreed on the the unreleased podcast purely because it's impossible to release it at this point.
The Lost podcast.
The Lost podcast. But there is what we both agreed was essentially the soul. I also believe it is in some senses God, but we both agreed at the very least it's the soul. Was that if you through truth actually ask yourself a question and truly seek the truth, you can come to what is pretty much universally the truth if you're actually seeking it. I think a lot of misplaced ideals in terms of, especially in terms of slavery, come from ignoring the truth. I don't think you can.
I don't necessarily think it's ignoring the truth. I think it's moving the goalposts, convincing yourself that these people aren't as human as you are, and thus do not qualify for what the rules would normally say.
Maybe so. That might be correct. But okay, so there's this idea. I think why I'm going specifically with truth is it's going back to Genesis 1, which which is that God, through the Logos, created the world, and it was good. I think creation through truth is our primary calling as humans. And I do think that the truth does come to you if you are honestly looking for it. I think moving the goalposts is by nature not looking for the truth.
I think in some cases I would think it's knowing the truth and trying to change the rules to make
But aren't you thereby ignoring the truth at some level?
You are taking the truth in bad faith, more or less.
But is that still truth?
The truth is still true. You're just trying to distort the rules about what qualifies the truth. So the truth stays the same. You're not really changing the truth itself. What you're doing is changing the rules and the descriptions required for that truth to be applicable. You're not saying that truth isn't true. And this is something you get a lot with, with bad faith arguments, is you don't deny a truth. You say, no, that's right. I agree with that. I'm not saying that's not true. And then you take a step back from that and start nitpicking and distorting the things that lead to it. In this case, like I said, with racism or slavery, that certain people, you say, yes, no, people deserve these rights. But these aren't really people, are they? Look at them. They do this and this and this, and they're not as advanced as we are, so they're really not people as such, right? And that's the end. That's a soundbite and a half. Jesus Christ. But that's what it comes down to. People will notice, generally speaking, if you outright distort the truth, at least after a while, and that's why if you're making a bad faith argument, if you're trying to mislead people, you don't change the truth absolutely. You change the qualifications and the ramifications and how that truth applies itself to the world, rather than changing the truth as a whole.
I see what you're saying, but I think you're only looking at truth in those terms as a singular level thing. You're looking at truth as only one part of it. I think all of that comes into truth. So the way you apply it is also a part of you. In terms of if you say, okay, this is true, but what that leads to isn't right, I think you're ignoring the truth of what that leads to.
Oh, and I agree, and that's why I said it's a bad faith argument. In law terms, it would be completely ignoring the spirit of the law, but using the wording of the law in a way that is inconsistent with the spirit of the law.
Well, that's what I'm saying is truth upon a level.
Right.
Like I said, there are definitely misapplications of that's the I believe third commandment is to carry the name of the Lord in vain, is to use the name of God in a way that is not accurate to who God is. I do believe that is the greatest sin, because it in many ways leads people away from God. I think I've heard way too many. There are definitely thought out atheists, don't get me wrong, but I've heard way too many arguments along the lines of, look what the Catholic Church is doing, therefore, if they represent God, I don't want any part of this God. There is this sort of idea that if you represent God badly, it turns people away from God. I do think that is why it is the sin that is unforgiven. So I do think there are definitely misapplications of the word God, but I think if you actually look at truth upon all levels, then I don't think what I said is wrong about. What I said was wrong about how if you actually seek the truth, when you introspectively look at yourself, when you introspectively ask yourself questions, you will eventually come to that truth. But you have to be willing to that truth. You have to be willing to accept that truth at all levels.
I think there are cases where people can't find a truth, and I think there are cases where people can't necessarily handle the truth that they find and either disregard it or try to make excuses around it or go insane. Ties back in with the Nietzsche thing from last time.
Is that Nietzsche? Are we going to Nietzsche? I am curious. Keep talking. I'm curious about the literal words of this, so I do want to look at it. I want to look at that real quick.
Oh,
so, but go
of
ahead.
what?
Talk about the literal translation of the abyss.
Oh, okay. But yeah, no, I think looking for absolutes can be a. I don't necessarily. What I'm getting at is I don't necessarily agree that if you try to find the truth, that you will necessarily find it. In some cases, I don't think that's accurate. I think you can try to find it, but absolutes, and in particular absolute truths, are, generally spelled out in simple terms, but it's kind of it's a big idea. It's complicated. It's complicated as, like, conceptually. So, not complicated by definition, but complicated in ramification, I guess. So, finding absolutes can be difficult, and I don't necessarily, I don't think philosophy as a science would exist if it was that easy to just find the truth.
Well, I don't by any means think it's easy. I have myself, I say to bring this up because I think it sounds very conceited when I do, but I have struggled to accept the truth as I find it. I don't think it. This is why it's actually an argument I have with your. Actually, real quick, throw this out there because I don't think it's second. The translation of looking into this is basically straightforward. That's a good translation, so I just wanted to double check that and make sure it was a good translation. It's fairly straightforward, but so that is correct. But in terms of like I said before in the last Drunken Dialectics podcast, is your ideology seems to be based upon the idea that humans are both empathetic and rational. I think if you're not naturally rational, it is very hard to be rational. I think if you're not empathetic, it is very hard to be empathetic. It is very easy to fall into the trap of, not even the trap, it's very easy to see the struggle of striving towards something that you are not, and say, this isn't worth it. It's just not worth it.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think you can build society. My main problem is I don't think you can build the problem I have with ANCAPs also. You cannot build a society upon the necessity of people coming to morals on their own. This sounds brutal, but I think that's the best way I can phrase it.
I don't think that's what I'm arguing, though. I'm not implying that people should always, like, the assumption isn't that people will come to morality and on their own. I just see, sorry. I think that's more of that's something that can be taught through, education, for one. I think education is the most important thing for a society in general. I just don't think the top-down teaching through enforcement, I don't think works. I think it gets, in many cases, the reactions that the enforcer wants, but I don't think it necessarily actually teaches someone to be ethical. It doesn't teach someone to be moral. It teaches them not to do something because... It doesn't teach them not to do something because it's bad or because it has a negative impact. It teaches them not to do something because going to jail is bad. And I
think in many ways that's why jails exist. Because if you could rationally teach somebody not to commit crimes, then crimes wouldn't exist today.
Well, not everyone is wholly rational, and not every...
I'm not making... I don't say that lightly. I do think most people work on their base instincts.
I
don't. And again, I don't say that lightly.
I'll go ahead. No, I think it's fine to say that outright. Because I don't necessarily even know that anyone is wholly rational. I think we all have instances where we would act irrationally in a certain situation. Situations of extreme stress can cause some strange reactions from people.
I would say even a moderate amount of stress.
Yeah.
I don't think it takes much to push people towards the nationals.
Well, it depends on the person. Different thresholds,
of course, there are exceptions.
But yeah, no, I'm not arguing that that you should expect people to be wholly rational or wholly empathetic. I'm more arguing that influencing that from the top down and influencing it in a hard and fast way doesn't really fix the problem, and in some cases only exacerbates the problem.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Actually, I think this is actually going to a deeper conversation that I don't think we've actually touched upon, so I didn't want to get there. But you know what? I'm a little drunk, and I'm going to get drunker. I'm about to take another shot. So, Payne, you haven't talked in a while. Do some talking, brother.
All right.
I apologize. I'm a little drunk, but I'm excited for what we're about to get into. I'm going to spring this on Devin. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to spring this on Devin as we go.
I'll open another beer.
That's a good idea. I would say a shot. If you want to stick to beer, then stick to beer.
My stomach is still a little angry at me from last night. Beer seems to sit a little easier. So,
all right. I guess I will fill the silence with my voice.
what do you think about what we were just discussing, Jake? How do you feel about it?
I don't know. I'm pretty. Yeah, I think people do have.
Hey, have you slept?
It's been a while.
Oh. You seem a little tired.
Just a little. It's okay though. Alright, no big deal. Yeah, I do think people have moments of instinct, and I think everyone has impulsivities as well. That, so yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to speak Devin in language.
Before we go into this, there's one thing I will say that I think is important. On those instances, the very stressful influences that cause someone to act in a way they would not normally act. I understand those exist. I understand that those definitely influence people. However, I do disagree with a common idea regarding that, which is you would never know what you would do in that situation without actually being in it. In some cases, I think that's true. However, I do think you can mentally prepare yourself for something like that.
I do want to get into that. Real quick, I'm going to speak to Devin in language he might understand. Vistravit, mój drug. Take the shot, my friend.
All right.
My Russian is very. I'm very much a beginner, so that could very well be wrong.
Da.
Okay, so here we go. Okay.
We clinking?
Clink the
We're
glasses. Clink the glasses. Okay. And real quick, while I light my second cigar, Devin, can you go ahead and say what you just said if you remember?
What I just now said?
I think you were speaking on, do you know what you do in a situation?
Yeah. I think there are high-stress situations that will cause people to act in a way that's completely inconsistent with how they would normally act. However, and I don't think you could ever fully prepare for some of those situations because there are things that happen that you just could never have expected. However, I do think it's valuable to consider what would I do if I was in a given situation, and that I do think that has an influence over how you actually react if you later come into that situation. I think the idea that you could never know what you would do in a given situation without being in it is not entirely accurate. I see where they're coming from with that, but I don't think it's entirely accurate.
Okay, actually, I was actually wrong. I do actually agree with you. That is
Nice.
in terms of that, I do think that a lot of what I've actually done over the last couple of years, when I've really come to my again, it sounds pretentious, but awakening in terms of like philosophical thought is that we're gonna get into this actually after this, but I don't think people are inherently good. I don't.
I don't either.
Oh, really? That
I don't
surprised
think
me.
people
I do
are
want to get into
inherently
this.
anything.
Ooh, we might disagree there, but we don't. I hate to say happy. I am happy that we agree with the first part though, because I'm surprised by that. Because the general idea of the left is that, and I say general, is by no means everybody, is that people are inherently good. And I don't think that's right.
I don't. The inherent. I will say the inherently is the issue. I take the good as. I do think people in general strive towards doing what is good, because generally speaking, doing what is good is what is optimal as well.
I disagree. I don't think good is optimal in almost any circumstance. I don't think it is. It's almost.
We need to be careful because this actually.
In any situation, there is a way that you could do it that would not be morally good. That would benefit you.
It's actually one of my critiques of capitalism, is that it encourages looking for those.
Okay, so we don't disagree necessarily. We might disagree on specific points, but I don't think in general. I don't think we disagree.
I don't think. Okay, let me rephrase. I don't think anyone outright. Not anyone. There are exceptions to every rule, but. I think in general people do not go out to do evil.
I'm not sure actually. I'm still.
Or at the very least, not what they don't consider themselves to be evil.
Leave the bag of chips alone, Payne. They can hear you.
They cannot.
Okay, I'm still working my way through exactly what I think about. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not sold. I'm not completely sold on the idea that people don't inherently try to do evil. I think
I don't necessarily, and I'm not necessarily saying that people don't try to do evil, even specifically out of moral reasons. I think in general there's a realization that unless you're very subtle about it, in most cases doing harm to people tends to get a reaction that will harm you.
Okay, so
I think you should go stop it.
I was going to cut that out, but we're going to leave that part in. So let's try to close this up real quick. We'll come back to it next time. And can we quickly try to find a topic for next time?
Yeah. There's a couple different options, I think.
I think we need to eventually get to the God podcast.
We need to do
we should do that next time or wait a little bit?
I think we should wait a little bit longer on that one. There were a couple. There was the one I threw out to you, the individual versus society. I feel like could be a good podcast.
That could be good.
Free speech is going to be that one we're gonna have to clear the calendar for. I think that one will go very long.
It could. So I think that'll be a Wednesday podcast.
Okay.
Because that's when we tend to have most.
Right.
So, actually, no. I take that back. Thursday's when we have. I cannot get my mic right. I'm adjusting it. For those who can't see. I'm trying to get it right. Okay. So, I failed. So next, actually, I take that back. Friday is our long form podcast. So we'll probably do that next week, or I guess two weeks from now will be our Friday. Friday podcast.
Actually, I won't be here for that one.
Okay, so we'll have time then to prepare.
I do need to talk to you about that. Not this off week, but my next off week, I will be in Alabama for Christmas. So.
We'll work it out. We can make it work. Right? We don't have enough of an audience that they're hanging on every word at this point,
right?
So we can take a break. That'll be around Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll probably.
I'll leave out the 20th, I think, 19th or 20th.
Okay.
And then I won't be back until the 26th.
Okay, well, we'll try to fit one in before then if we can. Okay. If not, then that's fine. We don't. Like I said, we don't have.
We'll get this one Wednesday, for sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely get next Wednesday. So next week will be. What did we just say? Should we go into God?
God or the individual versus society?
Okay, well, it's going to be one of those two. We'll decide in the meantime.
Free speech coming soon. But
free speech coming soon. That'll be a big one. I'd be surprised if we disagree too much on that.
We agree on the main things. I think we disagree on some particulars.
We disagree on the application. This mic is getting farther and farther away from me, no matter how I digest it. I am trying. Okay.
It's a regular mic. Me and Devin have the same thing.
Oh.
And Brandon's just too drunk to operate.
This is a big wake up moment for me.
It's a pretty.
This might have to become sober dialectics to really operate this mic. Okay. So, hopefully, if you've been with us this far, you'll stick through the awkwardness that just occurred. So next time we will talk about either not free speech, either
individual versus society,
yes, or
God.
Okay, so please tune in next time. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm still fighting my microphone right now. It's currently winning.
I just sneezed in the mic. I'm sorry.
Oh God,
we
it's
can
going
cut that
downhill
out
from here.
I'm the only one over here just chilling.
You
But
can cut the sneeze out.
But
I'm gonna cut everything out.
But no, I think we should leave this
We'll leave it.
or make a blooper reel.
Oh, it will be
But
okay,
yeah,
so
no, everybody have a great night and
again, please
tune
like,
in next
share,
time.
and subscribe. if you
Like,
enjoyed
share,
this.
and subscribe.
That's
Post us on Reddit
Okay, so
or
this
any
has
social
been,
media.
This has been Brandon,
Devin.
Pain?
and please tune in next time for
Drunken Dialectics.